I'm now going to introduce you to Mark Wilkinson. Mark is a developer and co-founder of Highrise Digital. He's going to be talking to us tonight about transitioning into a block-based editor in a pre-Gutenberg world. So please give Mark a big round of applause.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me as well. So, as Dan said, my name's Mark, and I'm going to talk to you how we moved to using a block-based editing system in WordPress before Gutenberg was a thing. So this talk is not entirely about Guttenberg, but it will touch on it as well, because obviously it's a big topic and it impacts on the work that we have done. So it is worth saying that this is going to say about an alternative approach to using Guttenberg, but that does not mean to say that me or Highrise Digital are anti-Guttenberg. It is the future of WordPress. Whether you like it or not, it will be the future of WordPress. So we will certainly be embracing that. But on our journey, when we started looking at how to give our clients more of a block-based system, it just wasn't ready. We weren't ready for various reasons. So we looked at alternative ways of doing it. And that's what this talk is going to cover. So if you've not used Guttenberg, if you've not looked at Guttenberg, then well, probably 3 months was the time, 3 months ago, but certainly have a look at it now. It is a WordPress plugin if you have not used it, so you can quite easily install it on a testing site, I would recommend, not on a live site. And it will be released in WordPress version 5.0, which is, well, imminent, as Dan mentioned at the start of the presentation of this evening. When it will arrive, who knows, but it won't be very long, so make sure you're getting ready. So, what sort of brought about this change in the way that we were building WordPress sites? And the main reason that we decided a block-based system for letting clients to make websites was because designs have changed. So we've seen this change over the last 5 or 6 years, actually, but particularly over the last two years, designs have changed rapidly from what they used to be looking like. I watched a very good talk a few years ago about how the web looks the same. All websites kind of look the same, and I think that is true, but they all change at the same sort of rate, if you like. They all follow a pattern. So that change has happened in the last few years, and that's prompted our change in the way we've been building websites. So let's have a look at this change and what it was and what it meant. So this is an example of a what you might call a traditional design from a few years ago. This is the facebook.com newsroom website, I believe, and I'm sure Gary will tell me whether this is true. It's on VIP, WordPress.com VIP, or it was at the time. It's in the WordPress showcase, if you've not seen it. On the WordPress.org, they have a showcase of all the different sites that use WordPress. This is one of them. And this is what perhaps a more traditional design used to look like. They're not all the same, but they follow these sort of patterns that we found. So you have a header at the top, and in this header you tend to have a menu, you would have a logo, you may have some social sharing icons, possibly a search. That often is a popular thing in the header. You then have the content box. So this is the main body of the page, if you like, and traditionally it's just had an image or images, a gallery maybe, some contents, the author's information, etc. But it's kind of all one section of the page. On the right-hand side, in this case, you've got a sidebar. It doesn't have to be on the right. It can often be on the left. It changes around depending on which theme you're looking at. But in this case, they've got a sidebar on the right, and they've got some information about what categories of blog or news they've got, and various other things. But it was very popular, a sidebar with sites a while ago. And then you've got footer at the bottom. These haven't really changed that much, to be honest. We've got usually a menu in there of some sort, some usual copyright information, site information, cookies information these days, privacy information these days. But they haven't really changed very much at all. But that's kind of what we used to get as a design. And design was different, obviously, but essentially they kind of look the same, a lot of them. They had the same elements, and that's what they look like. So I guess how have they changed? So this was a design we've been working on recently over the last few months, building a site, and this was the design that we received. This is one of the pages that we received. And you can see it looks a bit different. So we've got different sections. We've still got a footer, which is fairly standard, but the other sections kind of have disappeared a little bit. There are similarities, don't get me wrong, but it has changed slightly. This is another example from a different page from the same design, and you can see it's slightly different. So when you break it down, it's kind of built up of blocks of content. The block is here. So the block of content that we know of with Guttenberg. So we've got at the top there, we've got like a header block, or what we've called like a hero block, which is the hero sort of big picture or big image across the top. It sometimes is like a slider on various different pages if you've got more than one. We've still got the menu and the search, they stay the same, and the logo. And then we've got other sort of blocks of content that tend to be full width. The sidebar has gone away slightly. It's not gone forever. I think it'll be back as well, but it's disappeared a little bit in designs. This is the other page. Again, we've got a video block. We've got this sort of recent posts or featured posts, or whatever you want to call it. It's got this grid of posts. This was obviously the design, so these will obviously be filled with, these grey boxes will be filled with images when the actual site gets launched and so on. So this was the design we received, and it's quite hard to do this in WordPress in many aspects. So it presents a problem for developers, for designers, for assemblers, people who are making WordPress sites. It becomes a bit of a problem. How do we make this available? How do we make it so that the clients can manage the content, edit the content in WordPress with this block-based system? Obviously, in the future, that's probably going to be Guttenberg. But we weren't using Guttenberg at the time, so how did we do it? So we look at the old design again. These are the things in WordPress that allow us to do this quite easily. So at the top there in the header, we've got a WP Nav menu. That's the function that you can use to output the menu. WordPress has a built-in menu system that allows you to edit menus. It's pretty good. It gives you like nested menus. There's plugins to extend that and make it better, such as mega menus and things like that. So it's got a pretty good menu system that you can use to do the menus. And we've also got the customizer where you can add logos and things like that. Favicons out of the box and stuff, so that's pretty good. We've then got the main content of the page. That's the WordPress editor as it was, or as it still is at this moment in time, I guess, which is the WYSIWYG editor that we all know and love, or know and not love. And that's kind of really good for this. It allows you to do the post title, it does the date automatically for you, it gives you a WYSIWYG to type the content in, where you can add galleries and pictures and links and lists and all sorts of stuff. And it's pretty good for this sort of layout. So this left-hand side of the page, it does really well in terms of handling that sort of content. The sidebar is really good. We've got some widgets in WordPress. Some people love them, some people hate them, but for a sidebar, they work pretty well. You can add widgets that do this sort of stuff, add the categories and a list of pages and even images and things now. There's lots of new widgets that have come in relatively recently. I can't remember which version of WordPress it was, but we can have videos and galleries and images and things linked to different places. So it's really good for handling the sidebar. And then in the footer, again, we can use nav menus or widgets to handle the footer. Lots of themes handle the footer with widgets, and they have like different columns. But it works pretty well, and it allows clients to edit these pages relatively straightforward. There are things that could be improved, definitely, but they can do it pretty well. So how do you allow the client to edit this content when you've just got that to allow them to edit it? It becomes pretty difficult. We only have this WYSIWYG box in WordPress as the content editor, so allow them to do those full width, sort of rich style blocks with images and videos and text and all sorts of other things. Embedded content becomes a little bit more difficult. However, there have been lots of attempted solutions over the years. There's been countless numbers of solutions that have been tried. Some have been really good, some of them have been really, really bad, and some of them a bit in the middle. So let's have a look at some of the attempted solutions. So the first one is the good old shortcode. If you've never used a shortcode before, it kind of looks like that in the editor. It's not quite as big as that, but you kind of get the impression. So it's basically something in square brackets, and it's a piece of text or a string of text. It can have some attributes as well. So it could have some, such and such equals something else. If it was like a tweet shortcode, it might be like user equals WP mark, number of tweets equals 10, and then it would show 10 tweets from my sort of account. And it works really well. So on the front end, this gets replaced with whatever the output should be for that shortcode. But it's a bit hard to use. Unless you know exactly what to type, it doesn't work because you don't know what it is. And it can be a bit of a pain, to be honest, for content editors. If you're a WordPress user that's seasoned, you know exactly what you're doing, it's fine, they work really well. But if you're new to WordPress or you're a client that's just got a WordPress site, it's like, what on earth is this string I'm having to type in? It just means nothing. Why am I typing this in when I'm getting something on the front end that's completely different? It can be a bit confusing. There's been some attempts to fix that as well. So I don't know if anyone's seen this plugin. It's called the Shortcake Plugin. It's like a attempt to provide a UI for shortcodes. It's actually really, really good. If you've not used it, have a go with it. And instead of having to type that string of text for the shortcode, it gives you a user interface, something like this. So on the post edit screen next to add media, you get an add post element button. When you press it, any shortcodes that have been registered with it, they list on the screen as an icon. You can click on one of those. This is like a quote one. And then you get some boxes to type in the stuff that you need to type in. So this is the quote text, and the source of the quote is written in that box. And then it's not actually shown on here, but down in the bottom right, there'll be an insert into post button. When you press that, it will drop that into the editor. But not only that, it will preview what it will look like on the front end. So it's a bit of a better experience for clients. But it's not perfect. It requires some work from the developer to make it work. It's better, but it's not quite there. The next thing to look at was page builders. These are really, really popular at the moment. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of them, all trying to do the same thing in different ways. Some of them are very, very good. Don't get me wrong, they are. Some of them aren't so good. But they all try to allow us to create these block-based layouts, page layouts that we can create inside WordPress rather than having to have a developer come in and allow us to build that stuff. But we found they fall short in a lot of places. For us, they just give too much control. They allow you to change practically anything of a website on that page. So I can add a block, and I can add the padding and the margin and the background color and everything. So really what happens is the user or the client, the owner of the website, becomes the designer. They can design any page they want to. And if they're a great designer, then that's good. But they've probably paid for a design, and actually they can't actually stick to that design because the tools that we're giving them to edit the page don't allow them to stick to that design. Something we're quite passionate about is making it so easy for the clients to edit their content. So making it so that they can't get it wrong. It's going to look good on the front end all the time. Page builders, they do allow you to do that, but they give you a lot of control that I don't think clients sometimes need or want because it's too complicated for them. So there's Elementor at the top left, I think it is, Visual Composer, don't know what the bottom right is, and Divi is the one on the bottom, sorry, the bottom left. Divi is the one on the bottom right, which is quite a popular page builder if you've used that. So they're really good, but they just fall short a little bit for what we were looking for. And then, of course, there's Guttenberg, is another attempted solution. It will be the solution, I'm sure it will be the solution. It's not ready yet, it's not quite ready for launch, and I'm sure even once it launches, it's going to improve over the coming weeks, months, years. It does have some issues. So again, it has this aspect of giving too much control. So I don't know if you've used it, but like on a paragraph block, you can change the size of the font with a slider, which is dangerous to me. You can have background colors, you can have font colors, you can have drop caps on the front of it. You know, how are we supposed to stick to some design principles when we've got all those options? And yes, you can remove them. I'm sure you can remove them, but out of the box, it does give a lot of control. It also has some other options, other problems, should I say. I was looking at using Guttenberg for some projects recently, actually. And one of the things we often do is like a call to action block, which basically gives you or gives the client the option to add a title, an image, a description, and a button. So essentially, you know, here's some information, click this button as a call to action. And I was finding myself thinking, well, I could make my own block about this, just to give the clients the stuff to put in. But then I thought, well, actually, Guttenberg does this out of the box. It gives me a heading or a paragraph. It gives me an image. It gives me a button. It gives me a paragraph to put the description in. But there's no way or easy way of grouping that and calling that block a call to action block. It's all separate in the design or in the layout. So again, I'm sure there's ways around that, but out of the box, it's not quite there for us. So those are some of the solutions that we looked at and declined, I guess, because they weren't right for us. So let's have a look at what our solution was and how we solved the problem of trying to create websites which have a block-based layout, allowing the clients to easily manage that content so that it was obvious where to edit the content and where to manage those pages. And the solution was something I'm sure you've all used. It's not rocket science. I'm sorry to say, if you're coming with some amazing answers to things, it isn't rocket science. If you've not used Advanced Custom Fields from Elliot Condon and his team, it is a wonderful plugin. It allows you to create completely bespoke editing screens for WordPress. It is really good, so have a look at it, definitely. What we were using though is one of the field types in that plugin called flexible content. And this was the field that really made our sort of system work. It is a pro version that you need to buy. It's peanuts basically to buy, and you only have to pay it once. I think it's $25 for a single site to use. It's ridiculously cheap. And what this allows you to do, as you can see in the little screenshot here, is it allows us to create different blocks. So in this case, downloads, quote, gallery, image, and content. And the user can just click this button. It doesn't have to say add row. It can say add section or add content or add block, whatever it can. And then they can choose what they want to add. And when you click on one of these things in the list, it gives you a different set of fields in the editing screen that are appropriate for that particular block. So if I was to click on the content one at the top, I'd just probably get the WYSIWYG editor that I get now. If I was to click on the quote one, I'd probably get something similar to the screenshot that you've just seen, where you get like what's the quote, what's the person that's given the quote, etc. And this is a really great way of doing it. So this is an example of what we've built for someone. So yes, it does animate, I thought it was. So here you can see there's lots of different blocks, if you like. You can drag and drop them up and down. Each one has different settings or different fields for the user to fill in, and it's pretty intuitive for the user. They come in here, they decide what they want, and they've got a box to type in the information that they need. They don't have to worry about how that looks on the front end. They don't have to worry about how much padding they add onto it. That's all handled within the build and the design, and that just gets output properly for them. There are some options, because they do need them, let's be honest, but we try to limit those as much as we can, and this plugin allows us to do that. It allows us the control to say, we'll let the client handle this, or edit this, or change this, but we're not going to let them handle all these things they don't need to worry about. So it's really good in that aspect. So all this led to us creating our own plugin, and we use this on probably 75% of all the sites we build now, and we've called it HDACF Blocks plugin. It was born because we found ourselves using the flexible content field with ACF a lot. And we thought, we're just writing the same code again here, and then we get on to the next project, and I'm just writing the same code again here. So we wanted a way to make this more reusable, but at the same time, making sure that it was flexible. We didn't want to be stuck into one way of doing things for all clients that had to use these fields and these blocks, but we wanted a way to speed up the process and make it so that it was nice and flexible, so that we could use the same code base on multiple projects. So we created this plugin called the HDACF Blocks plugin, and it needs ACF Pro to work, so obviously you need to have that installed and running and active, and a license in there for that. So what we created was a number of blocks out of the box. So these, I don't know whether this is the exhaustive list at the moment, but these are all the different types of blocks that we included in our plugin. So we've integrated with Gravity Forms to create a block for that. I don't know if you use Gravity Forms, really good. Recent content, probably a really badly named block, but it's kind of like latest posts, if you like, or a latest custom post type. Content is just a WYSIWYG. A feature row is that kind of like media on the left, bit of text on the right with a button. The media could be an image, it could be a video or something, and you can reverse that round as well so that the image or media is on the right and the text on the left. the client can decide which way around they want it. Videos, accordions, really good for like FAQs or accordions, so you can throw a lot of accordion, FAQs like question, answer, and they're all collapsed, then you click it and it expands. That's quite a popular one. Call to actions there, statistics, all sorts. So you can see the sort of things we have, and like a separator is just basically a horizontal rule, and then we'd style that for whatever the client's design is. But it gives us some flexibility in what they have. So that's the blocks we have. Some clients have other blocks that they're not in that list, and we build them specifically for them. Some clients don't need all those blocks, so we wouldn't activate them for them. But the plugin is built so that it's very easy. It uses add theme support, a function in WordPress, to show whether a block should show for that particular client. This is the content block. This is a terrible block. I don't know why I put this in the slide. I should have put another one in, because it's basically the WYSIWYG, but there you go, I'll learn from that. So this is the content block. Every block has the option for a title. You don't have to have that. Some blocks don't need it, some blocks do. And then we can style every block title to be very similar. This one has got a repeatable field for the content, and each content WYSIWYG is treated as a column. So if you have more than one, it will split it into 2 columns on the front end. And we limit that to 3, I think, because obviously, or maybe 4, I can't remember. But again, that's flexible. We can change that on a per project basis, because obviously 5 columns gets a bit cramped when you're on a desktop design. And each column can have a custom class. So if you want to do something specific with it, you can add a class in there and then style it, even using the customizer or something if you wanted to. You'll notice that each of the blocks has a content. Doesn't work on there. Content tab at the top left, and an options tab. So this is the options tab, and again, most blocks have these options, not all, but most. So you can choose a background color for the block. So if you think about the designs we saw at the start, some of those had a background color on them. You can choose a background image if you wanted to put an image at the background, and we'd have to make sure that that looks okay, depending on what image they put on the front end. And this option to use light text. So if you pick a dark background color, then dark text, dark background isn't going to work. So we'd tick that box, and it adds a class to the block, and then we can style that block based on that class to say, look, this needs to be treated as a light coloured block in terms of the text. And each block can have a custom class, so the whole block can just be given a custom class. We might want to do something different with it that's not particularly standard, that needs to be done. So, you might have heard me speak about extensible development, something I'm really passionate about, and it was really important to me that we built this in an extensible way. What is extensible development? Essentially means we can use the same plugin on every site we build, but we can modify it and change it without changing the plugin itself. So we have this sort of like auto-updating through GitHub. So we don't change the plugin on a per client basis. We can add, we can interact with the plugin using actions and filters to make changes. So for example, we can change the fields that are in blocks. So if certain blocks don't need a certain field, we've got a people block. If they don't want to have a LinkedIn profile information on that, we can just take that out. So these are some of the extensible features. So we built it with template overrides. So all of the front-end markup is done in the plugin. We don't have to redo that for each project. But sometimes that isn't appropriate. We need to change the front-end markup for different clients because the design just needs it a bit different. So what we can do is we can take the template that's in the plugin and we can just copy that into our theme in a specific folder, and it will use that instead. It uses the same principle that WooCommerce does. I think if you use WooCommerce, you can take those templates that are in the plugin, you can put them in your theme, and they get used instead of the ones in the plugin. So it allows us to change the output of the blocks without changing the plugin code itself. So we're not worried about updating it and losing all the changes that we've made. As I said, the fields are just filterable fields. So as a developer, I can take fields off the screen, I can add fields to the screen. They're essentially just a massive array in PHP, and I can then push things into that array, or I can pull things out of that array, depending on what fields that I want to have for a specific client. Obviously, if I make changes to those fields, then any ones that I add are not going to get output by the plugin. You'd need to then override that in your theme and do a custom template. There's lots of actions and filters inside the plugin, so we can put functions in there that would output content before a template or after a template, or we can, for example, all of the image sizes that are called are filterable. So if one particular block needs to have a bigger image for a certain project, we can quickly filter that with a function to make that image size a lot bigger. And we're currently implementing responsive images and lazy loading as well into the plugin as well. So that will be built in out the box so that we can have all clients doing those things which are a bit improved for performance. And the last point is there's lots and lots of helper classes. So some of the blocks, like the content block that I showed you, have repeater fields in them. So you can have more than one content that splits it into columns. If it's a call to action, you can have more than one call to action and it would show like 2 in a row or 3 in a row. So there's classes for all that, telling you how many there are on a block. And yes, I know you can do that with CSS, but sometimes it is really handy to just have a class that says, look, this is a call to action block and there's 3 of them in it, or there's 4 of them in it. If you add a custom background image or background color, a class gets added to show that that block has got those features, same with the light text. So it's really handy to have lots of helper classes, and all of the classes on all the blocks are all filterable as well. So if I need to add another class in as a developer, I can quite easily do that with a filter. It wasn't without its challenges though, building this plugin. It's not perfect at all. It is not perfect. It still has issues. So I thought I'd just touch on a few of these challenges that we faced and how we tried, I'm not saying we're successful, but how we've tried to overcome them. So the first one is the interface and the styling. So I don't know if you've used ACF's flexible content filter field, but this is the edit screen when you've got lots of those fields on, and it kind of all blends into one. So on the front end, if I look at this page, it becomes very difficult to understand where my content is to edit. Is it in that content section? Is it in that image section? Is it in that accordion? I absolutely don't know. So I've got to go in here and expand them all and try and find it. So it's a bit difficult to understand. So what we tried to do, sorry, before I say that, is it is a bit better than that, which is a popular page building plugin. This is a quite extreme example, so it's it's a bit biased, I must admit. But this is actually a real example from a client that emailed us and said, I need help with my WordPress site, editing the content. And we said, all right, so what are you using? Visual Composer, sorry. We said, well, you should be able to edit it. So when we logged in, this is what we saw, and we thought, that's why you can't edit your content. It is better than that, but it could be improved. So this is what we did to try and improve it. It was a bit of styling in the admin. That was all it took. So we found that actually, if you made the headings darker, it made them stand out. It sounds ridiculous, but it actually helped a lot. And what we've also done, I don't know whether you can see, is that next to the block name, so next to content, we've actually put the block title. So whatever the user has typed into the block title, we've actually listed that next to the block name. And there's a nice filter in Advanced Custom Fields that you can use to do that, which is quite good. So that gets populated. So at least they can see which section of the page that they want to make an edit in, and they can go in and make that edit, which is good. Other issues, everything in ACF is post-meta. It's not part of the content of the post. So if you're using other themes and things, they need to have changes made to them for actually to output any content. Additionally, WordPress does not search post-meta by default in a search. So although your page might be full of this particular keyword, because you've added it in all these blocks, a default WordPress search would say, it's not there, which is a bit strange for people to understand. There are some very good plugins that do better search. I think we've used Relevancy and another one that escapes my name. Someone will shout it out on the later somewhere about. But they're quite good and they work. And I've also found some code recently that does extend WordPress's search to do metadata. So there are solutions to that, but out of the box, it's not ideal. And then the other thing was reusable blocks. And this is something that Guttenberg does very, very well. It allows you to save a block and then use it in multiple places on a website. So I can have a block that, I don't know, shows something. And then I can save that and then add it to multiple pages or multiple posts. And if I change it once, it changes across all those other posts. We've actually developed this now for the plugin. It's kind of, we've used it once. It seems to be working. So fingers crossed. It's based on a post type basically, and it works that way, and it works quite well actually. But it could do with some of it more testing. So hopefully that'll work as well, and enable us to have reusable blocks. One of the popular ones is a lot of people seem to have like a couple of call to actions in the footer of their website, or like a sign up box in the footer, and it allows you to add it as a block and then basically put it on every page. And if you change it once, you can change it on all those pages. So I don't know if you've seen this post. So the Advanced Custom Fields team have actually done some miracle work, I must admit, about allowing you to use Advanced Custom Fields to create Guttenberg blocks. So this is something that I'm currently investigating at the moment as to whether we can reuse a lot of our plugin and make them available as Guttenberg blocks using ACF. It's great because it doesn't need any sort of JavaScript or React knowledge, which I don't have. I know nothing about it. So that was my worry with Guttenberg, and again, why I couldn't really use it, because I just haven't a clue, to be honest. And I just didn't have time to learn it. I wanted to learn it, and I do want to learn it, but clients have got in the way, and you know, the day job takes over, really. But this allows you to do it without knowledge. Again, it's not perfect. It's great, but it's not perfect. But if you've not had a go with it, then and you're looking to create Guttenberg blocks, and you're limited in your knowledge of JavaScript, like me, then it's a really good option to look at. And like I said, congratulations to Elliot and his team for creating this. It's certainly something that I think is going to help a lot of people with Guttenberg. So that is us. That's my journey with using a block-based editor in pre-Guttenberg. I'm sure all that will change in the coming months as Guttenberg becomes a thing and so on. So I said, I'm Mark. I am co-owner of a small remote WordPress agency called Highrise Digital. I'd be honoured if you follow me on Twitter. It's WP Mark if you want to do that, if you want to find out what we're up to, and lots of WordPress related stuff in there. And as I mentioned before, we are trying to hire someone, a WordPress developer, someone who is reasonably competent front end and back end, has got those sorts of skills. So do visit that URL or do have a chat with me if you are interested in that. Thank you.